A U.S. federal judge believes employers should provide birth control. Failed candidate for Georgia's governorship, Stacey Abrams, believes illegal aliens should vote. And lastly, the CDC found that Americans aren't having enough kids. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. So, on Sunday, U.S. Judge Haywood Gillum blocked Trump's administration rule that would allow employers to opt out of providing women with no-cost birth control from taking into effect in 13 states. The rule was to take effect today. And the Trump administration made the rule change in favor of religious freedom, which would allow employers to deny contraceptive coverage to women if it's against their belief. The states argued that this will cause women to have unintended pregnancies because, people all of a sudden forget about condoms and think that birth control is the only contraceptive tool we have. Come on now. They also argued that it would force women to rely on state-funded programs for birth control. But hang on. Aren't we supposed to champion state-funded health care? We are constantly told our private sector is doing a horrible job at providing adequate health care. So this rule would then help women receive better health care because it's state-funded, right? Wrong. Even those who support state-funded health care realize the private sector is essential to providing top-notch health care. However, the bigger issue at hand is that everyone except Trump's administration shies away from the fact that our First Amendment is at risk. And the people putting it at risk are those whose job is to protect it. Who am I referring to? The judges and elected officials. For example, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said the following on Sunday regarding the issue. Today's court ruling stops another attempt by the Trump administration to trample on women's access to basic reproductive care. It's 2019, yet the Trump administration is still trying to roll back women's rights. Our coalition will continue to fight to ensure women have access to reproductive health care they are guaranteed under the law. Okay, first I have to ask, what has Trump administrations done, to quote the Attorney General, to trample on women's access to basic reproductive care? Last I checked, he isn't making birth control illegal. He's not in any way preventing women from getting birth control. As a matter of fact, there are numerous women clinics who provide birth control, and according to Teen Health website, most pills cost between $15 to $50. Plus, there are some birth facilities that allow women to pick up birth control pills every month for free or for a donation based on her financial status per Livestrong. Which leaves only one honest way to frame this argument, and that is, what he is doing is ensuring everyone is protected under the First Amendment equally. Private businesses are owned by private citizens, therefore allowing them to run their business how they see fit, which is why they have a hiring process, and also why you have the choice as a private citizen to accept or decline the offer based on your or the company's beliefs. Secondly, why is no one up in arms at the fact that employers don't give equal treatment to reproductive care between the genders? How obscene would it be if, by law, an employer was required to provide free condoms to their male employees so they could have safe sex? I know you can make the argument that birth control has more functions than just preventing pregnancies, and fair enough, truly fair enough, but so do condoms. They also help you from getting STDs, which will deteriorate your health. So why not force employers to have coverage for male reproductive care? This issue truly cuts deep at the bone on every front. The First Amendment is being tested by leftists. And I understand you can make an argument that the right has come against the First Amendment when pornography was a huge thing. But right now, this is even more crucial than the argument of pornography. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that what Republicans were saying regarding pornography was true, that it is damaging. There are a bunch of young kids watching pornography, and it is completely distorting their view of what a romantic relationship is. So yes, pornography does have a detrimental effect on society. And you can make the argument that so does birth control, which is why, we need to have it and employers need to provide it. But in all actuality, it all comes down to the First Amendment. And by not allowing private citizens to practice their First Amendment right, you are actively going against it. So right now, we're feeling all the pressure coming from the left. And I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt and say they truly have good intentions and want to improve our world. However, their good intentions are manifesting in extremely dangerous ways. And this is just one example of that. We can't forget about the baker in Colorado who was taken all the way to the Supreme Court because he didn't want to make decorations for a wedding cake for a gay couple. And fortunately, the court ruled in his favor. We also can't forget about hate speech and wanting to ban certain speech. That implicitly means anyone who supports it is against free speech, i.e. the First Amendment. And right now, we're only seeing this out of the left. Meanwhile, as the fight for the First Amendment continues, so does the fight for American sovereignty. You may remember Stacey Abrams from her failed run as for Georgia's governorship in 2018. You may also remember her saying voter suppression is why she lost and the election was stolen from her. But the most important thing to remember about her was the accusations launched at her for wanting to allow illegal aliens to vote in the election. However, she quickly denied those allegations. Well, this weekend, she had an interview with PBS Firing Line with Margaret Hoover, in which she exposes herself as a liar. And I will prove it to you guys. So go ahead and play this clip.
What is your view about some municipalities like San Francisco who have decided that it's okay for some non-citizens to vote in local elections?
I think there's a difference between municipal and state and federal. Part of municipality, I'm not arguing for it or against it, but I will say, having been deputy city attorney, there's the granularity of what cities decide is so specific as to, I think, allow for people to be participants in the process without it somehow undermining our larger democratic ethic that says that you should be a citizen to be a part of the conversation.
So not in some cases you would be supportive of non-citizens voting?
I wouldn't oppose it.
You heard that right. She wouldn't oppose illegal aliens voting in our election. Now, if our leaders are not against non-citizens voting, then what are the benefits of being an American citizen? There are none if we don't create restrictions to prevent outsiders from having a say in how we run our country. This is one small step to pave the way for open borders. First is what Stacey Abrams is talking about, allowing anyone to vote regardless of citizenship, making America the first global democracy. Secondly, grant citizenship to all immigrants, regardless of their status. Thirdly, dismantle all Border Patrol agencies, including ICE, like we know a bunch of newly elected Democratic Congress members want to do. So this is why I say the issue is coming from the left. This is where we face the most danger, is from the left. Not trying to start any kind of hysteria. I just think that we all need to be aware of what's taking place. So, and the last thing that would go in that set that I was just providing would be the dismantling of American borders, making us no longer a nation state, but a global community. This is also something else that we see in the platforms of some newly elected Democratic Congress members, such as Ilhan Omar. She talks about demilitarizing and essentially dismantling the American border and abolishing ICE and having a clear pathway to citizenship for all immigrants, which entails votership. You know, that's the reason they're doing it. And that's part of the reason. Another reason could be looked at through an historical lens. And what I mean by that is, if you look throughout our whole history, we have come a long way from living in small tribes of a couple dozen at most to, for the most part, living peacefully amongst millions and in some cases billions of people. The slow progression we have made to live in large nation states seems to be one huge leap forward for humanity. The ultimate leap would be one global community, which is what you could say they're attempting to do. However, the way we are going about it is wrong entirely. The way they're going about it is wrong, I should say. Because we are trying to destroy our history and our values in the process. And in order to lead people, you must have a likable vision of the future. And to do that, you must create a common set of values. So, tearing down our common set of values that are fundamentally built upon the idea of liberty is doing just the opposite. Right now, most countries don't share that American value, which is liberty. It seems to me before we can make the next transition as a civilization, we need to culturally share similar values. And that's why we see big governments all over the world, particularly in the Western half of the world, pushing climate change and why their agenda is failing at the same time. Only wealthier countries care about the environment because they can afford to, which means we are inherently at odds with poorer countries, and that makes it even more difficult to form a global community. The underlying features of a society is its values, and as a civilization, we have a long way to go before we can make a global community. Maybe the right time will only come when our nations are all first or second world countries. Until then, it's imperative that we call out politicians who want open borders, because that's a huge mistake. And it will be detrimental to our civilization as a whole, in my opinion. This is all my opinion, obviously. Now, in other news, not any more hopeful than the news I just given you, but nonetheless, it's important. So, CDC says Americans aren't having enough kids to replace our population. In a 2017 study, they found every state except Utah and South Dakota had a decrease in fertility rates. Now, if we go back all the way to the 1950s, women on average were having 4.7 children, and as of 2017, it was pretty much cut in half to 2.4. These statistics are global, and they're even lower once you take a look at what's going on in the West. We see the fertility rate at 1.7 as opposed to what it was in the 1950s globally at 4.7. Now, there are a lot of reasons as to why this is. One of them has to do with the fact that our society, that as a society in general, becomes wealthier and smarter, they have less children. Another is that society is putting pressure on women to have a career as opposed to having children. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just one factor that can't be ignored. A last factor I would like to throw out there is more of my personal opinion, is that it has to do with the convolution of marriage. Now, only upper and middle class families or people are having kids and getting married, starting families, the way that we picture what an ideal family is. While it is true that poorer and less educated people have more kids, we just can't ignore the fact that our whole perception of what a family is changing dramatically, which I believe has a lot to do with the drop in how many kids people are having. So this is an unfortunate reality, and we probably only have one way to change it. And forcing people to have babies is not one of them. It wouldn't be a good one, at least. You'd cause a riot, that's for sure. We don't want to live in the Handmaid's Tale. And what I'm referring to, the issue at hand and the problem that I want to, and the solution to this problem I want to talk about starts with the editing of human genes. This has already taken place. We already, with the CRISP-9, it was an Asian scientist who began to genetically modify started to modify genes within a baby. There's debates going on whether this is ethical, so on and so forth, but this could ultimately lead to scientists creating babies which would free women of childbearing and provide a way to replace the population without forcing pregnancies. Upon perfection, you could then create the ideal human. Although, this too could be equally as concerning as our current situation. With that, you could have some omnipotous, you could have a malevolent, omnipotous being controlling the production, if you will, of children. Something along the lines of A Brave New World is a good example, you know. But however, the only thing we can do is move forward and try to steer clear of that societal disaster, which is extremely difficult. There's a lot of things we can do that can make the situation worse or better, but one of the fundamental ways to make sure we are going in the right direction is having the ability to communicate. Being able to share these ideas without getting offended. And that's all I'm trying to do here. And I'm sure some of you have noticed that I'm trying to take a more middle ground perspective, because you have to give the other side the benefit of the doubt. You just have to. That's what I'm trying to do here when I talk about Democrats or leftists. I am really giving them the benefit of the doubt. I just don't logically see where they're coming from. The only way that I can relate to them is on an emotional level. And that's the most primitive way to think. So we have to use our abilities as rational beings to steer us in the right direction. So that's what I wanted to cover for today, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.